Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Consumed by Grace podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Pastor Henry.
And I'm Pastor Brooke. And welcome back to a new episode of Consumed by Grace.
Yes, we are here for episode 2 of our cult series, where we're taking a bit of a deep dive into some cults and learning a little bit about some cults and also things that are cultish.
Yeah.
But this episode's all about some of the ones that you know, and to give a little bit of historical perspective on some of these cults. So we're going to be talking, I dare say, the two most famous ones, if you've grown up in the United States, are the People's Temple that was founded by Jim Jones, that was in Indianapolis, Indiana, and then moved to San Francisco, California, and then wound up, I forgot to look this up, Guyana.
Guyana. Guyana.
Yeah, is where they ultimately ended, and
we'll say the jungle.
Yes. They were welcomed to the jungle.
That's a different cult.
It was not fun and games. Sorry. You know, I did really good last episode. No song references, so gotta
get one
myself.
in every once.
You know, it's a thing. And then we're going to also talk about the Branch Davidians, which I learned about much more later. But that's something that happened in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Not in the grand scheme of things, not all that long ago. So we're going to talk each about them. About how they got people and how people became enmeshed in some of these, and what are some of the things that we can learn from that, because there's a lot that we can learn as we read about these.
Yeah. Well, and it's they're similar and they're so different as well, but and so it's kind of exciting and interesting to learn how people sort of came under them because of who they were as leaders, in their own rights, and so that'll be interesting to talk about.
So we'll start with Jonestown, Jim Jones, and the People's Temple. I grew up hearing about this. Dare I say, one of the most ubiquitous things in our language now is, don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, or they drank the Kool-Aid.
Yes, or when someone has fully bought into an idea, whether it's a clothing brand or a band or a football team or just some hobby that they are fully, they're locked in. That's their new go-to thing, and it almost becomes part of their personality. You say they drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
This is what it is referencing, even though
it wasn't Kool-Aid.
It was not Kool-Aid. What was it, bro?
I don't know if this is good or bad for Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like, they got recognition. So, the general rule is
all publicity is good publicity.
Correct. But
is it, though?
Is it? Because they actually drank Flavor Aid.
They drank Flavor Aid.
Not Kool-Aid.
But we are jumping way ahead.
Yeah.
So that's where it's part of who we are. But there's really a lot to this story. There's a great book by an author named Jeff Gwynne called The Road to Jonestown, Jim Jones and the People's Temple. I read this a couple of years ago, and I found that to be very interesting because there was so much of that story that I did not know, because especially not living in that time, not reading the newspaper articles as different things came out. All I knew was Jonestown.
Yeah.
And I knew that, hey, here are these crazy American, religious nuts that left.
Followed this man,
this crazy cult people, and then, most of them ended up dying. He has a very interesting, complicated history. And it to me, it serves anyone. It's good reading for anyone who's going to be, A, especially serving as clergy or leadership in the church, but B, just leadership in general in any organization on, these are things you need to watch out for in yourself or your others, because pretty early on, he showed these manipulative tendencies, and they just got ignored and pushed to the side for various different reasons.
Like for personality. That's just personality.
Yeah.
Or that's just who he is.
Just who he is. As Brooke said, boys will be boys.
Yep.
This is a classic example of, hey, things just got shoved aside, where if someone would have paid attention early, maybe some of this could have gotten avoided. But Jim Jones, he started really coming to prominence and rising through the ranks. When he was in Indianapolis, Indiana, eventually he was associated with a lot of churches. From a young age, he became fascinated by preachers and the way that preachers and other people who were just good speakers could captivate an audience. And you see him studying a lot of different people. You also see very early in his life the way that he tended to abuse when he got that kind of authority. But he eventually was ordained first in the Assemblies of God and later the Disciples of Christ after he founded the People's Temple and moved away from that Pentecostalism. But he very much was drawn to what we might call today prosperity preachers, what you would call today people who were healing preachers, cultivating that kind of following and that kind of devotion. So it's really interesting to go and hear some of the people that he was influenced by. However, what I found was so interesting, there's a very good chance if he doesn't leave Indianapolis, we remember him as something very different. Because while he was a Christian minister, while he was already doing some things that were, let's say, a bit unsavory, he was also one of the people at the forefront of integrating the city of Indianapolis.
Right.
He championed what we would now say were our leftist political ideas, kind of going back and forth on whether or not he was communist at that point in time or not. But he was an activist, and he did a lot of good for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I find that to be an interesting bit of his history, that while he showed problematic things, what if someone had intervened earlier?
Yeah.
Maybe he's only known for those good things that he did at that point in time.
Right. And do you think that the good things that he was doing played into how people trusted him to follow him later?
Oh, 100%. Because, he took people, when he eventually decided to move out to California, where he thought there would be he took people with him, but people were very much attracted to his social gospel ideal. But then all of a sudden, just as he's doing this, he also starts doing things like saying, how integral he is to doing things, how he's going to be the only one, making claims about being, either God on earth or Jesus incarnate, and preaching against the sky god, as he liked to say, of other religions. And then what he also started doing is started really manipulating people and manipulating folks to gain power over them. One of the worst, in my mind, one of the worst ways he did this in the Christian context is, doing like, hey, invite these people to church. Hey, get to know them. Hey, maybe have them fill out this questionnaire. Hey, maybe call them on the phone and ask them these 5 or 6 questions. And later when he was preaching, and he used to preach for anywhere from like 30 minutes to 90 minutes, depending on the thing, which I cannot imagine preaching that long.
30 minutes is pushing it.
He would all of a sudden start peppering in people's personal information. Yeah. Saying things like, there's someone here whose marriage is on the rocks, that they've probably even gone to see a divorce lawyer. Well, if that's you here today, I'm here to tell you, well, he knows for a fact that person is here. He's been briefed by someone that person is in the building on that day. Yeah. Ooh. Yes. Ooh. Absolutely. And so those were the kind of things that he would do. He also started planting people to be healed. Having them fake injuries, having them do all of these different things. Sometimes even having folks drugged so that they could look like they were out of it, and then later they would be able to pop back up and be
healed.
Ready. Yes.
Wow.
In the midst of this time, they transferred out to Northern California. They ended up in San Francisco. The People's Temple, at one time, I'm pretty sure was one of the largest Disciple of Christ churches. Although it had a very I would say the disciples of Christ did not have much influence over them or control. One of the interesting things in the aftermath of this is the disciples of Christ actually changed some of their ordination and minister oversight rules after all of this.
Total sense.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah. Eventually Jones, he started, you see him starting to go down to this line of, we talked about, he's gaslighting people. He's manipulating them into saying he's the only one who sees things this way. He starts exerting power over people in the way that he, while he was married and had had kids of his own, they adopted several kids. He had a multi-ethnic family because he wanted to have a child and everything. But he also slept with women and men in his congregation as a way to exert power. He would claim power over a man because, hey, I'm sleeping with you. I'm making you do this to me. So,
which happens all the time in the world,
It does. It does. All of this stuff finally starts getting reported in San Francisco. He starts making some powerful enemies because he courted powerful people.
And this was in the 70s,
60s.
60s or 70s? Yeah, okay.
50s, 60s. I forget exactly when Jonestown was. I should have written down the date of that. Eventually, because of all of these allegations, although they claimed it was because of religious persecution, they fled to South America, and they tried to build Jonestown. It was supposed to be paradise. It was obviously not paradise. It was awful. Things were not going as planned. And when finally some of the United States government tried to intervene is what led to them sending a gun squad after the U.S. representatives and the mass suicide by drinking the poison-laden liquid.
Yeah. And so the reason for that was, they were never going to escape the thumb of,
Yes, that was his big thing. He became convinced, because it's funny, one of the interesting things, at one point in time, supposedly they were going to Russia.
Okay.
Because Russia was going to save them.
Okay.
And I think you read through that all, and it's just wild.
But, at some point, Jim Jones believed his own lies.
Oh, of course he did.
He became manipulated to himself.
Yes.
And that's how you get, that's how he got here, or got to South America, is that at some point, he had manipulated so many other people that he had to believe what he had told them.
He absolutely did. And so it's interesting. One of the great quotes from this book that I think kind of sums up how they got here is, no one listening to Jones' sermons, even those who were the most devoted to him, could take it all in. But at some point, each follower heard something that reaffirmed his or her personal reason for belonging to the People's Temple and for believing in Jim Jones. As Jonestown historian Fielding McGee observes, what you thought Jim said depended on who you were.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's those manipulation tactics that he used in the beginning, right? These, hey, go find out, tell me details of this person's life so that I can insert myself into their lives by saying this from, a podium. I won't call it a pulpit because that's not what it was.
Yeah, from his place of speaking.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, he would do things like, he would go off on his particular rant, sermon, message of the day. And then he would have his inner circle go out and see what people were saying, so he could call everybody back to say something else if he found out it wasn't well received.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to have some level of intelligence and cleverness to be a cult leader.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. He was a charismatic individual. The other thing is, and I mentioned this earlier, but even as they started degrading and deteriorating, he was still doing good things.
Yeah, almost, manipulating under the guise of, but look here.
Yes, yeah, and that's you read through several of his longtime followers, and you would think, especially as you how could you go in there, see what's going on, be subject to stuff like that, and not leave. And don't get me wrong, many did. But some said, but yeah, then we thought about all the good that we were able to do, and we just thought, well, I guess that's, it's just Jim being Jim.
Or that's just the cost of doing what good in the world. Yeah.
That's just the way things are.
Yeah.
And no, it's not.
It's not.
It's not. When you have legitimate questions about something, ask those questions. And if you're not getting satisfactory answers, you're just being shut down.
Yeah.
That's a big red flag. Pay attention to that.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is like people might be. I think about this group of people. I can understand why someone might be afraid to leave because they've been manipulated to believe that this is it. Like how could you leave when this is the end all be all? Yeah. This guy is God. Like I can see why people wouldn't leave.
Yeah, and that hit into Jamestown, and that also played into the second group we're going to talk about today. The Branch Davidians, David Koresh. Now it's interesting. This one does not have near as long of a history because we all know of the compound in Waco and the shooting and everything that went down. That was the biggest thing that Waco was known for years.
Well, that played out on TV.
Yes. Yeah, because that was that 91, 92?
I don't remember.
Again, that was
dates,
in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting, and to me, it's almost an even sadder story.
Yeah.
So it started with David Koresh was born Vernon Howell, which. See why I changed his name?
Yes.
That Vernon Howell does not have the same.
It's like when pop singers change their names.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was not a good stage name.
Correct. Yeah.
For what he did, but early on in his life, he showed a penchant for violence and for sexual issues. I'll just say it like that. But as he grew up, his family was part of a Seventh-day Adventist church, and eventually he joined with a splinter group of that, and which eventually led to him joining up with the Branch Davidians, which was a splinter group of the splinter group.
Yep. Okay.
And very small. We're talking about a church cult that would have been the size of a couple hundred people. Okay. It's not the biggest thing in the world out in Texas, but he is a master class in someone who took various pieces of scripture and said, "Hey, y'all, I'm it.
Yeah.
I am Jesus come back to earth. I am the one who fits all of these descriptions. Hey, I'm going to take this random verse from Isaiah and say, hey, and this is why I should be allowed to marry your daughter." And he started getting all of these people to follow him, to believe that he was who he said he was, move them out to this compound, immediately starts saying that, hey, no matter who you are, basically you're my wife.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter your marital status, doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your anything. Yeah. And he just was able to accumulate this group of followers totally committed to who he was. A quote from, this is another Jeff Gwynne book, Waco, David Koresh, The Branch Davidians, and A Legacy of Rage. J. Philip Arnold, whose professional career has been dedicated to studying religious history and faith, says that anyone doubting David Koresh and his followers' sincerity about dying in a mandated fight should have considered it from the Branch Davidians' perspective. If you believe in God, and if you believe that God has told you to do something, wouldn't you do it? And so that to me is just so, shows why it's important for us to have some grounding in our faith aside from what just someone in a pulpit is telling us.
Yeah.
Someone who is in a preacher or religious authority role, because when someone becomes the voice of God, and then someone very clearly starts saying things that they contradict what we should readily see in the Holy Scriptures, but we don't have the basis to contradict them,
yeah,
we can end up in a situation like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and, David Koresh also was a charismatic leader. You can go and find videos of him preaching or recordings, and you listen to his voice. He has a very soft, commanding for sure. I mean, it feels authoritative.
Yes.
But still, it's not, when he's not on a rant,
yes.
He still has a sort of a soft, like, even keel, even tempered tone.
Whereas Jim Jones leaned into maybe the more revivalist style, he was a little more soft spoken, a little more even keel is a good word.
Yeah, I would just say even keel across the board. Now, don't get me wrong, David Koresh got on some rants, and he could get excited too. But everybody has that.
Yes.
But just his demeanor alone, like, again, I can see how somebody would be like, oh yeah, that does sound accurate.
But it's interesting. I appreciate you saying that everybody can get on some rants, because we can. But it also depends, like, what are you getting on a rant about?
Yeah.
Because I know the one way to easily make Brooke Hemphill
I don't know what's
go
coming.
on a rant. Brooke.
Oh gosh.
I'm going to go to Foodland.
No, I already know what you're going to say.
I'm going to get some chicken tenders. Do you want some Zax sauce with those?
No, I don't, because everybody's chicken fingers have their own sauce, and that's how it works. Like, I'm sorry, but you cannot mix Zaxby's chicken sauce with Milner's chicken fingers. Doesn't work. Milner's has their own sauce, and it goes with their chicken fingers.
For those of you who are not Arabians, Milner's Dairy Delight.
Shout out! They are not sponsoring.
They are not. Though if you would like to,
We'll
Milner's,
take it.
we will take it, and you can pay us in chicken fingers and chicken sauce.
Yes.
Is their Dairy Delight? They used to be the Dairy Queen.
Yes.
When Dairy Queen was going through a corporate mandated upgrade facelift.
Yep.
They were like, we don't want to do that.
Yep.
And so they bought themselves out and stayed open. There is another Dairy Queen
Across the street.
Across the street, because of course.
Yes.
But yeah, so Milner's is a little local treasure here in Arab.
Yes,
Go get a chicken fingers and a milkshake,
and you'll understand when you get the chicken sauce why it belongs with that chicken finger.
And this is one of those things. Like, I did not know this until 2.5, 3 years ago when I moved to Arab. That Arab is apparently one of the birthplaces of chicken sauce.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for whoever else has a claim, I'm sure it's probably valid. Brooke thinks you're wrong.
Yes. You are.
So anyway, that's a very silly example,
Yes.
but you can get very passionate about it. And that's fine, and that's fun, and we're going to be silly about it.
Yeah.
However, what happens when it's something that is important and is of value? Do you have the ability to withstand manipulation like that?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about in our first episode to remind ourselves, like, the language that surrounds what we're talking about is important. When you go off on a rant and it starts to harm people, that's when you can kind of have, hey, red flag warning, like, hey, this is too far.
Yes.
This is when we get into that cult language. Whereas, like, my stance on chicken sauce and chicken fingers is probably not going to harm anybody.
Probably.
I hope it doesn't, because I do rant about that.
To your credit, you don't discredit anybody's sauce that I'm aware of. You just said it has to be eaten with their chicken finger.
That's right. You can't mix the sauce and the chicken. But yeah, so I mean, again, it's about crossing that line. There's that line that we need to be aware of, is when we do have or are sitting under someone who is teaching. Being aware of where that line is.
And I appreciate you saying that, Brooke, that's a really good line. And I think a good standard for both who we are as leaders and then who we are as people who, as they sit under listen to people as we, to me, this is a great lens that you can apply to politics when you're trying to think about who you're going to vote for, who you want as your leaders in various different positions. Is the rhetoric they're using building up or tearing down? Is their rhetoric they're using harmful to a particular group of people? Is the rhetoric they're using setting themselves up as the only authority, the only way that everything else is? If that's what's going on, we need our little antenna needs to be going up, and if not a red, at least a yellow flag of, hey, this is someone I need to proceed with caution with, because they're doing some very dangerous things.
Yeah. I think about John Wesley's rules, you know, like do no harm. Like that is the definition of that. Like how the words that we're using, are they, is it falling under do no harm?
And it's very particular, do no harm and then do good.
Yeah.
Because how often do we hear someone say, well, to do good, I'm going to have to do a lot of harm first.
Yeah.
I think of another one of those thought ending. Well, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Yeah.
That there's one thing when you're talking about making breakfast.
Yeah.
It's another thing entirely when you're talking about people and lives and families that will get hurt or damaged because of the things that we are saying, the things that we are doing. That's something we have to take seriously.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's important. It's important to us for sure.
Yeah, because that's that there's there's a whole collateral damage that our words can cause if we're not careful with them, and there's something that'll happen. Particularly in cases like these where our presence with someone makes a difference, because we can legitimize someone or not in someone else's eyes by being associated with something like that. So being aware of who they are, how they get it. That was, again, I think of Jonestown and some of the people who survived, both who, they are all people who, like, they acknowledge the things that they ignored for years because of the good that they thought they were doing. Or, well, I know these are all these problems. I know things are not like they're saying, but he's the authority, so maybe there's just something I'm missing.
Yeah.
And
like you said earlier, there are people who are still willing to say, yeah, there was some bad thing, obvious bad things that were happening, and
I just chose to ignore it.
I just chose to ignore it because of, whatever the reason may be. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's a dangerous place to live, right? Because, and that's what these cult leaders, play on.
Yes.
Cult leaders are betting on you giving them some rope.
Giving them that leeway, that space that they're going to have, and they're going to take it.
Yep, they are. Yep, every time.
So be aware, and again, pay attention to the words that people say and how that they are using them. Have a bit of trust in your own internal mechanism. I believe that's the Holy Spirit. One of the ways the Holy Spirit works through us in saying, "Hey, something feels off about this." I either need to not associate with it, or I just need to be very cautious. Because there's something that feels like danger here.
Yeah, and I think as leaders, it's important for us to hear that. If somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, whether intentionally or not, you said these words and that hurt me," it's on us to say, I am so sorry. I didn't. That's on me.
That was my bad. I made a mistake.
Yes, and how can I fix it? Teach me. Tell me why. Help educate me why the language that I chose to use that particular day or conversation. Why did it hurt you? So that I can do better.
Yes. So I can understand. This comes up, I think, in our day and time some when we're talking about politics, and this is not you can't express a different political opinion than I do because that offends me. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about when we're something that we said, actively demeans
Yep.
and causes harm to someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there are ways where we can express our political opinion and, okay, yeah, we just caused harm to someone. And there's other ways where we can express an opinion. And if that makes you mad, then that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily have to agree with us, but that's not actually causing harm.
Yeah.
Learning to be able to notice the difference between the two is key.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, and those are things that these two leaders that we've talked about today did not learn.
They did not learn. In fact, they chose to run roughshod over. And I think one of the big things, and this goes back to one of the quotes from the first one, is when a group, like one of these, like some other smaller ones that we're going to talk about in the next couple weeks, when they cause you to lose your personhood at the expense of devotion to a leader, that's problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. You were created to be an individual.
There's a healthy thing about being a part of a group, because we are made as social creatures.
Sure.
But we're also made as individual social creatures, and there's a balance between those two. So as you come and you learn and you become part of a group, you become a part of a healthy group, whether that's a church, whether that's a hobbyist group, whatever it is, still having a grounding of who you are outside of that group is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what makes you you.
Yeah.
Like, we're not all robots doing the same things, going in the same, we're all individuals, and that's what makes the world beautiful. So, yeah, don't lose your touch.
Yep. So, yeah, just remember those kind of things as think about that. Yeah, I think it's probably a good place to wrap this up.
Yeah, next week we have some more interesting groups to talk about.
We do. Particularly one that hit us. We were a little bit older, and as this was happening and seeing it play out on the news, but the Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about Heaven's Gate. We're going to talk about some other smaller groups that maybe you've heard of, some that are even still active today.
Yeah, yeah.
Because sometimes it's easy to think, well, all this stuff is in the past, right? No. Happens all the time.
Every day.
All the time.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get to talk about that next week.
Next week, we hope you will join us you will join us in that.
Yep.
As you find us. Where?
You can find us in all the places, especially wherever you're listening to us right now, which could be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buzzsprout. You can see our pretty, lovely faces on YouTube.
And the rockin' t-shirts that we're still wearing because we filmed this in episode 1 on the same day.
Don't tell them our show secrets.
Fourth wall. Broke the fourth wall.
You can find us in our nerdness on YouTube as well, Henry.
Also, don't forget, give us a like, drop a comment if you have something to share. If there's a pertinent fact about one of these two groups that we didn't share that maybe you think we should have done a little bit more about, we'd love to hear from you, interact with you on that. And if you're really enjoying what you do, give us a follow and share it with a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll see you next week on Consumed by Grace.
See y'all. Bye.
Bye.
you.